looking at rounding as our first video for online studies. Rounding means that there is a particular figure that you have and you want to make it an estimate of it. It's actually not wrong, it's actually not right. For example, they ask you, how many people did you see in the market? You cannot actually give a correct figure, so you have to give an estimate. Let's say your estimate is like, when you went to the market, you saw 345 persons in the market. And then the question comes again, are you really sure that you saw 345 people at the market? Then you make another guess and say, you're not quite sure, but maybe you saw 362 people at the market. But on the second thought, maybe you remember that actually you saw 383 people at the market. Okay, so these are three different figures that you've given to show how many people that you actually saw at the market. This is the reason why we need rounding, so that we can change these numbers to a whole figure to represent what we want to talk about. Today we are going to look at 4 different ways that we can round off our figures to. First, we can choose to round our figures to the nearest tens, or we can choose to round them to the nearest hundreds. We can also choose to round them to the nearest thousands and 10,000, depending on the numbers that we are looking at. So let's look at these 3 different numbers that you're given to us. Now we have these 3 different numbers that presupposes that they are the numbers that you saw at the market. So if we are to round these numbers to the nearest 10, it means that we're just going to look at these tens, the number in the 10th place here, and then we'll look at the number in the 10th place here, and then we'll look at the number in the 10th place here. But in doing rounding, if you are doing tens, you have to look at the next door, which number comes before the actual number that you are looking at. So if you are doing tens, you have to put a consideration on your ones. If you are doing hundreds, you put an emphasis on your tens. If you are doing thousands, you put an emphasis on your hundreds. If you are doing 10,000, you put emphasis on your thousands. Okay. So now with the first 3 figures that we have, let's try to round these figures off to the nearest 10. 345. We want to round it to the nearest 10. Our figure 4 is in the 10th place. Our figure 6 is in the 10th place. Our figure 8 is also in the 10th place. Okay. The rule is that if you start on a normal line like this, okay, and you have this place to be 0, and you have here to be 10. In between 0 and 10, you have a middle of 5. So the rule is that when your next door number is 5 and more, you round up. So which means that you round up. However, if the next door number or the next number close to what you are looking at is less than 5, it means that you have to round down. Okay? Okay. So on the left hand side we round down, on the right hand side we round up. Okay. So now we've gotten these rules, let's look at what we have here. Now we have 345 and we want to round it to the nearest 10. Our next door number is 5, so which means the rule says that if your next door number is 5 and more, you have to round up. So rounding up 5 means that this one is going to give 1 point to the value that we have here. So our new number is going to be 350. So 350 becomes the nearest 10 of this figure. The same way, if we look at 360, because this 2 here, which is the next door number, is less than 5, we cannot round up and we have to round down. So if we are rounding down, it doesn't give any point, it carries 0 to the next number. So this number becomes 360. Because the 2 is smaller than 5 and it cannot give a point or it cannot give any value to your number in the 10th position. Okay. The same way, if you look at the 3 and the 8, we are looking at the nearest 10. So your 3 here is less than 5, so it can also not give any points to your 8 here, so we have to round down. So this number changes to 380. This is how we round to the nearest 10. It means that you look at your number in the 10th position and the next door number, the value of it. If the value is less than 5, it doesn't give any points to the number that we are looking at. But if the number is more than 5, it gives 1 point more to the number that we are also looking at. Okay, let's try a different one. We are still looking at the nearest 10. So we have 679. We want to change this to the nearest 10. So which means we look for the number in the 10th position. So 7 is in the 10th position. The next door number is 9. 9 is 5 and more. So it has to give 1 point plus 1 point to our 7. So our new figure becomes 680. So 680 becomes the nearest 10 for this one. Okay. Now let's look at changing a number to the nearest 100. You have 866. 866. So what are we looking at? We are looking at changing our 8 to the nearest 100. The next door number here is 6. 6 falls within the 10th position or the 10th place of this number. 6 is more than 5. So it gives 1 point to your 8. So plus 1 point. So the nearest becomes 900. The same way, if we have 806. If we want to change this to the nearest 100, because 0 here is less than 5, it cannot give points to 8, so it has to run down, which means 0 point. So this becomes 800. So our new figure becomes 800, because the 0 here is less than 5. Okay. Let's look at 1,000. We have 3, 4, 6, and 8. So we have 3,468. We want to round this figure to the nearest 1,000, which means that we are looking at the 3, which is in the thousands place. And then we look at the next door, or the next number that stands close to our 3. And that is 4. 4 is in the hundreds place. So we're looking at 3 in the thousands, and 4 is what we're going to consider if it has to make a change here or not. 4 is less than 5, so it cannot give a point to this 3. So it rounds 0. And our figure becomes 3,000. We actually put zeros here because these zeros are holding space for the actual numbers that were there before we did the round off. So after you've done your round off, the rest of the numbers are going to be in zeros, because 0 is what we have to use to hold space for the rest of the numbers. Okay, let's try one more. Let's see. We are still in our thousands. So we have 6, 7, 8, 2, and okay, so we'll stay here. So we have 6,782. We want to round this off to the nearest thousand. So we are looking at 6 and the next door number. We always look at the immediate next door number. So we have 7 here. So because 7 is 5 and more, we have to round up. So it will give 1 point. So it will change our number to 7,000. I believe this is very easy and straightforward for all of you. So anytime you are doing round off, the first thing that you have to do is to identify the location of the number that you want to round off. The next thing that you have to do is you have to look at the number that comes next to the actual number that you are doing the round off. If we are doing 1,000, first we identify which number is in the thousands. 6. Which a number that comes before the one that we are looking at. It is 7. Because 7 is 5 and more, it has to give 1 point to the number that we are looking at, which is 6. And it changes it to be 7. If the number next door is less than 5, it doesn't give any points to the number that we are looking at. So anytime, make sure that you look at these two numbers carefully. Okay, now let's do some examples on 10,000. So we have 15,673. Okay? So we are looking at our figures in 10,000. So we have 15,673. We finished with our thousands and we are looking at our 10,000. So actually when you say 10,000, it means that you are looking at this big number. The number here makes the 10 and the number here makes the 1,000. If you are looking at 10,000, you look at your 1,000. So your immediate number here becomes this particular one, okay? So what do you have to do? This is coming as tens, so this is going to give a point to the figures that you have over here. And we are not doing thousands round off. Mind you, we are doing 10,000. So if your figure here is actually more than 15, which means that it carries a 5 point here, and this has to go to the nearest of 20,000. So your nearest figure in the 10,000s that you're going to have is going to be 20,000, because we are looking at tens in thousand. We are looking at tens in thousand. If you put 16 here, it means that you are changing the thousands, but you are not changing the 10,000. So once we are changing the 10,000s, it means that this has to give a value to this particular one and change this to 10,000. So we'll have 20,000 as our answer here. Okay, so we have some exercises that we have to go through, and that will help us to understand our lessons very well. In this exercise, first you are supposed to round these numbers that you have here to the nearest 10. The next one, you are supposed to round off your numbers to the nearest 100, and then the third one, you have to round off your numbers to the nearest 1,000. The first one, we have A, which is 315. You are supposed to round off to the nearest 10, so which means that you have to look at your 1 here. The next door number here becomes 5. So rounding off these to the nearest 10 becomes 3, 2, 0. Because your 5 here is more than 4, and it has to give you 1 point to your 1, and then it becomes 320. If you finish this exercise, please drop it in the group for me to check for you. Thank you for your time, and see you in the next video. Bye. Welcome back. This is the last part of our lessons today. Today we've been looking at rounding, and we've taken a look at round to the nearest 10, round to the nearest 100, rounding to the nearest 1,000 and 10,000. We had our first exercise, and I believe that you are going through very well. We have a second exercise here that we also have to do in order to help us to understand our lessons very well. Over here we have a table that shows our numbers here, and then the various round off that we have to do. We have to round off these numbers here, first to the nearest 10, 100, and then to the nearest 1,000. So what you are supposed to do is, when you look at these numbers, you look at what will be the nearest 10 of this number, then you put it here. The nearest 10 of 100 of this number, you put it here. And then over here, 1,000. Rounding this number to the nearest 1,000, you put it here. So example, we want to round off the first one to the nearest 10. We have 9,552. We want to round it to the nearest 10. So we'll take a look at our tenths, the number in the 10th place, and then the next door number is 2. So this number, when we want to round off to the nearest 10, is going to be 9, 5. Because this is less than 5, it cannot give power to this 5. So we'll still have 5, 0 here. Okay? So you use that procedure or that understanding to complete the rest of your table, and then you send the finished work into the group for me to check for you. It's been nice to study with you today, and I hope that we'll meet again in our next lesson. Enjoy your time. Bye. I believe that you have enjoyed our class for today. As you all know, today we looked at rounding, and we look at the various nearest round off that we can do. We learned about rounding off to the nearest 10, to the nearest 100, to the nearest 1,000, and then to the nearest 10,000. With the exercises that we also have completed on the table, our first exercise and our second exercise, I believe that it's going to expand your understanding on this particular topic that we are doing for today. We still have to do some homework so that in the course of our stay at home, we can still have more to practice. I'll drop the homework in the group whilst we are doing the exercise. So once you do your exercise and you bring it forward for checking, you have the homework drop into the group for you to know the next thing that you have to do on this very topic. I hope that you take good care of yourself at home, and very soon we'll meet at school. Have a nice day. Bye.